Welcome to Ink-Stained Confessions, where the truth is messy, the love is complicated, and nothing's off limits. Sloan Part 4. The days passed in a blur, moving too quickly for Riley to catch her breath. Work meetings, group chats, and casual texts from Sloan filled the spaces, the rhythms of life marching forward like they always did. Sloan hadn't been lingering. They'd only seen each other a few times in the last couple of months, just enough to stay connected, but not close enough for anything complicated to creep in. And now, the day of the party was here. The sun had dipped low over Houston, and Riley's apartment was filled with the warm hum of neo-soul drifting from the speaker. Erica Badu, Jill Scott, and Maxwell, all swirling together. It was the kind of music that wrapped around her like a familiar hug, pulling her into the comfort of the moment as she stood in front of her mirror, towel drying her curls. The room smelled faintly of the shea butter she always used, and a thin trail of smoke from her joint curled lazily through the air. This was her space, her ritual, the one thing that always grounded her, no matter what was going on. Riley swayed to the music, rolling her neck and shoulders, the tension of the day slowly easing out. The glass of wine she'd poured sat half-finished on the dresser, and she took another sip before carefully laying out her outfit. The cream trousers, the tan blazer, the silk sage tank, all laid out in perfect order. She slipped on the sage tank first, smoothing it down over her skin, followed by the tailored trousers that fit just right. She added the light blazer last, tugging at the sleeves until they hit just below her elbows. Then came the details: her gold hoops, the slim chain necklace, a few rings, and the sage and tan dunks, still gleaming from the box. She took a moment to admire herself in the mirror, feeling a quiet sense of pride. The outfit was simple but sharp, just the right blend of cool and effortlessness. As she adjusted the sage pocket square in her blazer, the weight of the evening started to creep in, just at the edges. She wasn't sad exactly, but knowing Sloan would be leaving soon gave the night a strange, nostalgic kind of weight. It felt like the last day of summer, when you know the fun has to end, but you're trying to soak up every last bit of it before it slips away. She hated the idea of losing a friend, even if it wasn't someone she was deeply close to. Sloan had come into her life at a time when she was figuring things out: her sexuality, her independence, her sense of self. And for what it had been good. They'd had fun. They'd been easy together. There wasn't anything to mourn, not really, just the end of something good. Riley sighed softly, finishing the last sip of her wine and setting the glass down. It wasn't sadness, it was gratitude. She was grateful for the time they'd had, for the easy friendship that had grown between them. And now, as Sloan moved on to New York, Riley knew it was time to keep moving forward, too. The playlist shifted, and Maxwell's Ascension Don't Ever Wonder began to play. Riley couldn't help but smile as the beat kicked in. This was one of her favorites. She danced a little as she slipped her feet into the dunks, the music moving through her, loosening her up. The night ahead didn't feel heavy. It felt like a celebration. She wasn't losing anything. She was just letting go. Her phone buzzed, and Riley glanced down. A text from Sloan. Sloan, you still with me, fly girl? Riley grinned, typing back, always. See you soon. With one last glance in the mirror, she grabbed her keys and slid her phone into her pocket. The night was waiting, and she was ready. The party, a world Riley didn't know she needed. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, revealing the rooftop of a sleek downtown hotel. The air was crisp, the city lights glittering in every direction. The soft hum of low jazz mixed with the buzz of quiet conversation, and waiters in black vests floated between the guests, carrying trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres that looked too beautiful to eat. Riley stepped out onto the terrace, the scent of expensive perfume mingling with the night air. She adjusted the lapel of her blazer and smoothed down her trousers, feeling sharp but slightly out of place. This wasn't her world, not really. The people milling around were the kind she only saw when they breezed through the office with expensive watches and silk ties, heading to meetings she wasn't invited to. But tonight? Tonight she was in the room. The party was everything Riley had expected: elegant, exclusive, the kind of event you couldn't buy your way into without the right connections. And Sloan had made sure Riley was here. All right, Riley whispered to herself, adjusting her gold chain as she stepped further into the crowd. Time to work the room. Riley floated between conversations, balancing a glass of champagne in one hand as she greeted people she'd only known by name before tonight. Senior executives and department heads smiled warmly as they introduced themselves, her presence signaling that she was, in some way, connected to Sloan. And that mattered. "So, you're part of Sloan's circle," one older man said with a knowing smile, swirling the amber liquid in his tumbler. Riley grinned, taking a sip from her glass. "I wouldn't say circle, more like a satellite." The man chuckled. "Well, anyone Sloan trusts is worth getting to know." She didn't force anything, just smiled, exchanged a few business cards, and let the natural flow of conversation carry her from group to group. It was easier than she expected, the confidence she'd built with Sloan seeping into her interactions tonight, and it felt good. As Riley made her way to the bar for another drink, a woman she vaguely recognized from the corporate offices sidled up next to her. Tall, polished, and clearly interested. "You clean up nicely," the woman said with a sly grin, her eyes flicking down Riley's outfit with obvious appreciation. "Didn't expect to see you here, though." Riley offered a polite smile, keeping it light. "Guess I'm full of surprises." The woman leaned in a little closer, her perfume sharp and heady. "We should grab a drink sometime. Off the clock." Before Riley could respond, a subtle but unmistakable presence appeared at her side. Sloan. She didn't say anything at first, just placed a hand lightly on Riley's lower back, a touch so casual it could have been mistaken for nothing at all. But the shift in energy was immediate. The other woman's playful smirk faltered, and she straightened slightly, her gaze flicking between the two of them. "Well," the woman said, her tone forced casual. "Maybe another time." Riley bit back a grin as the woman slipped away, feeling the heat of Sloane's hand linger for a moment longer before Sloan leaned in, her lips close to Riley's ear. "You good?" Sloan asked softly, her breath warm against Riley's skin. "Always," Riley whispered back, the corner of her mouth tugging into a smile. The night flowed around them, guests chatting, toasts being raised, and laughter drifting through the air. But every so often, their eyes would meet across the room. A quiet connection passed between them, unspoken but understood. At one point, Riley slipped away from the crowd, ducking into a sleek, marble-lined bathroom just to catch her breath. She hadn't been there long when the door opened, and Sloan stepped in, her heels clicking softly against the tile. They didn't say shit. Sloan crossed the small space in a few strides, her hand sliding behind Riley's neck as she pulled her into a slow, deliberate kiss. It wasn't hurried or desperate, just a soft, lingering kiss that said everything words couldn't. When they finally pulled back, Sloane's thumb brushed gently over Riley's jaw. "You miss me already?" Riley teased, her voice low. Sloan grinned. "Maybe." "Come on," Sloan whispered, her hand trailing down Riley's arm before she turned to leave. "We should get back." The speeches started not long after, with guests gathering around praising Sloane's leadership and predicting her future success in the next venture. Others followed, some sincere, some just for show, all raising their glasses in her honor. Riley stood near the back, her champagne glass in hand, watching as Sloane took it all in with her usual grace. Their eyes met briefly across the room, and Sloane gave her a small, knowing smile, one just for her. The toast ended with a round of applause, and the party resumed its lively hum. Sloane floated effortlessly between guests, accepting hugs, handshakes, and compliments. But every now and then, Riley caught her glancing her way, as if checking to make sure Riley was still there. And Riley was. She always would be, at least for tonight. The party stretched on, the hours slipping away faster than Riley expected. Champagne glasses were refilled, hors d'oeuvres disappeared from trays, and Riley found herself laughing with people she never imagined she'd share space with. But through it all, there was a quiet, unspoken understanding between her and Sloane. This was their night, not in a grand romantic way, but in the way that some moments are meant to be shared, even if only briefly. The crowd began to thin as the night wore on, the hum of conversation and clinking glasses softening into a quieter buzz. Guests trickled toward the elevators, exchanging hugs and final well wishes for Sloane. The staff quietly cleared empty glasses and gathered trays, and the once lively rooftop shifted into that familiar, mellow after-party calm. Riley stood by the entrance, watching as Sloane made her last rounds. A few more goodbyes, a couple of handshakes, and a final toast raised in her direction. Sloane handled it all with that same effortless grace, commanding the space without ever seeming to try. Finally, Sloane made her way over to Riley, the heels of her strappy sandals clicking softly against the tile. A sleek black corporate SUV idled by the curb outside, waiting to take her home. "Well," Sloane said, her voice smooth but edged with exhaustion. "That's that." Riley grinned, slipping her hands into her pockets. "You pulled it off." Sloane's mouth curved into a small smile, the kind that was more real than most. "You think?" "Yeah," Riley said softly. "It was a good night." They stepped out onto the street together, the city's lights reflecting off the glossy surface of the SUV. A cool breeze swept through the night, carrying with it the quiet hum of the city winding down. They walked slowly, side by side, neither of them rushing the moment. There was no urgency now, just the easy silence of two people who knew this was goodbye, but didn't need to say it out loud. At the curb, the driver stepped out, giving Sloane a polite nod as he opened the back door for her. Sloane lingered for a moment longer, turning to face Riley. The quiet between them held a soft weight, not heavy but meaningful. "Come up for breakfast on Sunday?" Sloane asked, her tone light but not without meaning. Riley's smile was easy. "Yeah, I'll be there." Sloane gave a small nod, her gaze lingering on Riley for just a second longer before sliding into the back seat of the SUV. The door shut with a soft click, and the driver pulled away from the curb, the sleek vehicle merging seamlessly into the night traffic. She turned and started walking toward her own car, the sound of her steps filling the stillness around her. In the back of her mind, Sloane lingered, like the last song at the end of a playlist, the one you can't help but hum even after it's over. As the city hummed around her, Riley knew she'd see Sloane again, just one last time, over breakfast. But after that, life would move forward. It always did. And that was okay. Sunday morning breakfast, a thoughtful goodbye. The sun peeked through the curtains as Riley pulled up to Sloane's place one last time, parking neatly along the curb. The house looked different now, quiet, empty, like the soul of it had already moved on. Riley hadn't expected to feel anything, but as she stood at the door and knocked, a small ache tugged at her chest. The door swung open, and Sloane greeted her with a soft smile, dressed in a casual outfit, a fitted black hoodie and joggers, ready for her flight. Hey, Sloane said, stepping aside to let Riley in. Riley took a breath and walked inside, expecting boxes and bare walls, but what she saw instead stopped her. The dining table was set with delicate china and silverware, a white linen cloth draped over the surface. Trays of food, waffles, smoked salmon, fresh fruit, croissants, and sparkling water were carefully arranged, along with a bottle of champagne and two flutes. You catered breakfast? Riley asked, raising an eyebrow. Sloane shrugged, a small grin playing at her lips. My stove's already gone. Riley laughed softly, but there was something else in the air, a quiet thoughtfulness that made her chest feel tight. This is nice, she said, her voice softer now. Really nice. Sloane gestured toward the table. It's more of a thank you, honestly. Riley blinked, caught off guard. A thank you? For what? They sat down across from each other, the morning light filtering in through the large windows, casting a soft glow over the room. Sloane poured champagne into both glasses, her movements deliberate and calm, as if she were savoring every second of the moment. For being a good friend, Sloane said, sliding a flute toward Riley. For not asking for anything, not using our friendship to get ahead at work. I appreciated that more than you know. Riley's throat tightened. You never had to thank me for that. I know, Sloane replied, taking a sip of champagne. But I wanted to. And she leaned back slightly, a playful glint in her eyes. I put in a word for you with a couple of the execs before I left. Riley blinked. You what? Sloane grinned. You've got some people looking out for you now. Just a heads up. Riley shook her head with a quiet laugh, lifting her champagne flute. You didn't have to do that. I know, Sloane said simply, but I wanted to. They clinked their glasses together, the sound delicate and light, and for a moment they sat in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that says everything without words. After they finished eating, the air between them felt lighter, but still full of meaning. Sloane reached across the table, brushing her fingers lightly over the back of Riley's hand. Riley turned her hand over, letting their fingers intertwine. They didn't need much, just soft touches, quiet affection, no grand gestures, no desperate goodbyes. Sloane leaned forward, pressing a kiss to the corner of Riley's mouth, and Riley returned the kiss just as gently, savoring the warmth of it. They stayed like that for a while, close, but not clinging, just enough to feel each other, to say goodbye without saying it out loud. The low rumble of an engine broke the moment, and they both turned toward the window to see Sloane's black SUV pulling up to the curb. The driver got out, unloading Sloane's bags from the trunk as she stood from the table, smoothing out the wrinkles in her hoodie. Riley followed her to the door, her hands in her pockets, trying not to think too hard about how final everything felt. Don't be a stranger, Sloane said, her voice soft but firm as she stepped closer to Riley. Riley smiled, that familiar warmth rising in her chest again. You either. Sloane leaned in one last time, pressing a soft kiss to Riley's cheek. It wasn't romantic, just full of gratitude and quiet understanding. The kind of kiss you gave to someone who mattered, even if only for a moment in time. The driver cleared his throat politely, and Sloane gave Riley one last look, a small, knowing smile. Take care of yourself, Riley, Sloane said, her voice carrying the weight of a goodbye that didn't feel heavy. You too, Riley whispered back. Sloan climbed into the car, the door clicking shut behind her, and the driver pulled away slowly, merging into the morning traffic. Riley stood there for a moment, watching until the SUV disappeared around the corner. She exhaled slowly, her breath visible in the cool morning air, and slipped her hands deeper into her pockets, the quiet weight of the moment settling over her. The streets were quiet as Riley walked back to her car, the sun climbing slowly over the skyline. She wasn't sad, just grateful. It had been good. Sloan had been good. And now it was over, as things sometimes were. As she climbed into the driver's seat, her phone buzzed with a message from the group chat. Talia, brunch at noon? Don't make me drag you out of bed. Riley smiled, firing off a quick reply as she pulled away from the curb. She turned up the music, Maxwell's Whenever, Wherever, Whatever, filling the car, and let herself hum along softly, the weight of the morning easing with every note. And just like that, life moved forward. Some stories don't end with fireworks or heartbreak. They end with a quiet kind of peace. Sloan was never meant to be the grand love of Riley's life. She was the measured flame, steady, grounding, a reminder that not every connection has to burn the house down to mean something. Through her, Riley found confidence in rooms she never thought she'd belong in, and ease in moments she would have once overthought. She learned that intimacy doesn't always have to come with strings attached, and that gratitude can sit where grief usually tries to take root. And that's how this chapter closes, not with tears, but with a nod, a smile, and the quiet knowing that some people enter your life just long enough to remind you of who you already are. So, if you've made it to the end of Sloane's story, thank you for listening, for riding along through every glance, every brunch, and every rooftop moment. The flame may be measured, but it burns long enough to leave its mark. And next time, well, Riley's story keeps moving. So tune in for the next confession, the next twist, the next name whispered in the dark. Because around here, there's always another story waiting to be told. That's another ink-stained confession. Don't forget to subscribe, share it on your socials, and see you next time.